for joining us. This is Paul Wilson, and I have our special co-host with us today,
Nick Prignitz.
Nick, how the hell are you, man?
Good. I feel like I'm here every week, man. It's a Corona miracle.
It is funny now that we don't see each other at all. We talk much more than we used to, which is nice, man. It's nice to have you on the show. I think our listeners will get a kick out of it, especially today. I know you're going to have some really big news on a new product dropping and a contest for our listeners. And of course, also, I know our listeners are dying to hear from our actual special guest today, which is Eric and AJ from Innovative Diesel. But first, I wanted to hit with some big news, 15% off all stealth turbos at DuramaxTuner.com, calibrated power. Nick, can you just tell our listeners a little bit about how big of a deal this is for us?
This is a rare opportunity, man. This is, we got the stimulus coming from the GOVT, and now, we need to keep the lights on. We need to keep things moving, keep our staff busy. And we want to make sure we meet our goals for April. So we're doing everything we can to help our customers and, get people there. So 15% off. If you've been considering a stealth turbo, now is probably the time to jump.
I work in marketing over at Duramax Tuner. That's what I do. So I watch our sales and things pretty closely. We've never done a promotion above $100 off ever. Do the math, guys. If you're a listener, our lowest price, our entry level turbos, are like $1,550. So 15% off of that is significantly more money. And as we go up into the more expensive products, you're simply saving yourself more and more money if that's a turbo you are already going to do this year or next year anyways. And one of the big things I think that really rung true for me when we were talking about putting this together, Nick, was all the guys out there that need to finish their truck, and they need their truck now.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of idle hands out there looking to wrap things up. Truck builds kind of like, I got a lot of time on my hands now. Let's get this done. So, now's a great time for it. At least that's what you told me, Paul. I was kind of dragged into this one, kicking and screaming, honestly.
Well, hey, that's going to happen from time to time. Kind of the way that LB7 guys get dragged into doing an injector job, kicking and screaming sometimes. I know we've seen that in the shop where somebody comes in, they're like, man, it's just smoking a little bit just when it's cold out. And then we start digging into it and we're like, oh, these LB7 injectors are toasted, like they're done. And inevitably, every time we have to talk about replacing them, we discuss the difference between SAC 45s or even SAC stocks, an option out there now, compared to the VCO LB7 injectors. Now, guys, we did a huge full-on breakout episode just around this topic. So I don't know that Nick and I are going to be able to answer all of your detailed questions about that today. But Nick, just real quick, DLC, so diamond-like coating, why does that make such a big difference for VCO injectors?
The biggest issue with VCO injectors is ball seat erosion. And through the years, things have gotten better that where that erosion takes place has been hardened and has been, made better. As these injectors got a bad name, as the VCO injector got a bad name, the SAC nozzle kind of took precedence and took over in the industry, and the SAC nozzle's been used in the LLY and the LBZ, and we know those injectors are good for between 120 and 160,000 miles, depending on how hard they're used. And the LB7, the VCO injector, couldn't make it there, and hence the 200,000 mile 7-year warranty from GM and all the nonsense about LB7 injectors, right? But recently, Bosch has come up with a coating that is diamond-like coating. Man, I wish that was like my college handle or something. But this coating prevents that ball seat erosion and extends the lifetime of the VCO injector out to greater than or equal to the SAC nozzle.
Absolutely. That's a big deal, man. It's all about reliability, especially with LB7's got 16-hour job roughly to do a set of injectors. you don't want to have to do it twice. That sure as hell for sure. So yeah, make that investment, get the right injectors. At Duramax Tuner, Calibrated Power, we do carry Exergy's entire line of injectors. Most commonly, we see stock guys go with a set of Sportsman injectors, which is perfect for their trucks. So if you guys need those, hit us up. You know the number's 815-568-7920. Another group of guys I wanted to talk about, all of our listeners, send out there, please mob their Facebook page, post pictures of all of your trucks that have WC Fab products in them. They're trying to put some stuff together over there. Help them out. We rely on our listeners to help us make the show. You guys are a part of our listener ride review. You guys download the show. This is what it's all about. One of our sponsors really could use a hand. Jump on their Facebook page, send them a private message, shoot them a picture of your truck, and just say, hey, heard about you guys from the podcast. We really would appreciate that. I think that'd be a big shout out from our fans. But Nick, that's enough of paying the bills, man. Let's talk about what you're here to talk about today, and that's a brand new turbo coupled with an awesome contest, something that we've never done before on the show. Kick it off, man. Tell us about the 2003 to 2007 6-liter Power Stroke Stealth 67 G2.
Never thought I'd hear that come out of your mouth. I'm so excited just to hear you announce that turbocharger. It makes me happy.
It hurts a little.
Anybody who's been following our brand knows that we're strong in the Stealth lineup, knows that we're really into turbocharging, specifically on the GT3788 platform, which is the the LOY, the LBZ, the LMM, and the LML chargers. That Garrett variable vane lineup, that is something that we're strong on here at Duramax Tuner. So naturally, the 6-liter Power Stroke, that turbo kind of falls into that wheelhouse. And as we started looking through that charger, we caught up on some of our other R&D projects, and I've always had this one kind of on the shelf. We started looking through this thing, and it's just amazing how many parts are similar to the LOY and the LBZ charger. And we've had such great luck in designing and engineering vanes and unison rings and turbines, and a great match of parts on the Stealth 67 G2. And I'd noticed that nobody else out there really had put the time in the customization of the turbine side of the 6-liter Power Stroke. So I wanted to do that. I thought it was a good fit for the work we'd already invested, and I wanted to see how it reacted on a 6-liter truck. So we put one of those together. We tested it locally. The results are great. The response is great. It's all the response that we had on the LOY, that level of drivability carried right over to the 6-liter. And of course, we know that compressor wheel is good for 750 rear wheel horsepower or more. So, talk about a turbocharger that goes from stock injectors up through the gamut, 500, 550 horse, and even those competition builds. I think the 6-liter Power Stroke turbo is going to be a win for those guys.
Yeah, I mean, this is a platform, no surprise here. I've poked at quite a bit about 6-liters in the past. So when you guys first started talking, you and the R&D team first started talking about a 6-liter turbo, I do remember rolling my eyes pretty far back about, yeah, sure, guys, like whatever. And then I actually got to drive one. I actually got to get out and put some miles down and see what these things are capable of. It's fun. I mean, I get it. I've said it before. I mean, 6-liters, I get why they're fun to drive. I get why guys are really into them. That kind of ramps me up into today. So a couple of the things here. There's a difference from the factory 2003 and 2004 model turbo compared to the 2004.5 to 2005, compared to the 2005.5 to 2007. We only have one turbo. Which model does it fit?
It fits all of them. No, seriously though, if you're looking for a replacement, this will fit all of them. If you're running a 2003, one of those early turbochargers, we have a pedestal for you that we can give you that'll allow the installation of this turbocharger.
Awesome.
A lot of guys are big fans of the 03 turbo because it has the bigger vanes in it. And, they think, it's got the big vanes and the big turbine. I want to use an 03 turbo. We use the late model housings, but we mill the diffuser face where the vanes sit, and we use 15 millimeter vanes. So we use big vanes in our turbochargers.
Even bigger than stock then, right?
The height is the same as the 2003 trucks, so it's the 15 millimeter like the O3s, but the design and the contour is a more competitive, more of a performance design in stock.
Awesome. Okay, so let's say I love it because I think a lot of our listeners already know about our stealth turbos, and our main focus is making them stock appearing, drop in, bolt on, and just go with it. Like just let your truck fly, man. And that's really what this turbo works very, very well for. Walk me through who would be a great fit. What kind of trucks would we see this turbo going on? Who would be like the perfect guy to match up to this turbo?
Like I said before, it's got a really wide net. So, I mean, anybody who's in the performance game, I think, is a good fit. I would prefer to see this giveaway turbocharger go to somebody who's already got some work done to the truck. Of course, we'd like to see you have some tuning. We'd like to see you have some head stud, work done to it. We want the truck to be in good mechanical shape and well maintained, and enthusiast owned. Right? We don't want to see it go to a work truck or something like that where it's going to be at stock power. So we want to see it get worked. Anybody who's looking to make between 450 and 750 horsepower to the tire, and even a little less or a little more than that, would be a great fit for this turbo. If you're using it for towing, that's fine with me. Work the thing, you know what I mean? It's your everyday diesel owner. That's who this is built for.
I love it, man. So that's it. We are going to give a turbo away. These turbos retail over $1,900. We've decided that just for our podcast, so we're not going to run this on all of the other platforms. We're really going to push this just for our podcast fans. We're going to give one of these turbos away to you guys. There's a few things that we need to put out there to qualify first. First and foremost, we are looking for the biggest 6-liter Power Stroke fan we can find. So if you listen to this show and you say, hey, I am the number one 6-liter Power Stroke fan, you got a good shot at winning this turbo. You must own a working 2003 to 2007 6-liter Power Stroke F250 or F350. There is no exception to that because that's what this turbo fits. So just plain and simple. Man, we are looking for a truck that's got your basic supporting mods done. Come on, guys. We all talk about head studs. We talk about intakes, tuners. You know what the basics are. Your truck's got to have some sort of modifications for us to really consider you like, hey, this is the perfect guy. This guy's clearly such a 6-liter fan. He's already done the basics to get his truck ready for this. We are, like Nick said, we are looking for somebody who uses the truck regularly. Come on, guys. No trailer queens, no garage caps. I only drive it once a year. We're looking for somebody who puts at least 10,000 miles a year on the truck. You have to be a podcast listener because that's the only place we're announcing this. So you have to have listened to at least 10 episodes of Diesel Performance Podcast. You can even skip. You could find 10 episodes that I'm not on if that's really what you're going for. And then, of course, you have to agree to install the turbo once you get it on your personal truck, and you got to be willing to be a guest on a future episode to discuss the turbo. So that's the prereqs. If you got those 5 things checked off, boom, let's get a form filled out. Jump on over to Fans of Diesel Performance Podcast Facebook group. Jump in there and fill out the form. It's really simple. We have a great breakdown. You can read all of the details about the turbo, learn more about it. And then there's a really short form where you're going to tell us about the truck. We're going to pick a winner at the end of the month. So come the 30th of April, Nick, Chris Emke, and myself will sit down. We'll go through all of the contest entries. And then we're going to decide, okay, did you meet the prerequisites? Will this turbo be a good fit for your current or potentially near future build? And then really what we're looking for, how we're going to pick a winner, is who can best clearly describe why they are the number one 6-liter Power Stroke fan. And that's what we're looking for. That's all you have to do. Tell us why you're the biggest fan. You could win a brand new turbo.
Easy enough.
Guys, you can tell this is something I'm excited for, right? I've definitely we've talked about a lot about turbos on this show before, and we're going to continue to talk a lot about turbos in the future. This is one that I've personally gotten to see them develop several iterations of as we've developed this turbo over time. And it's really cool to see how this thing works and how this thing is just a home run. And that kind of leads me up to why we have on today's special guest. So Calibrated Power, every show sponsors our special guest. And this week, I thought since we were giving away a 6-liter turbo, we should probably have some 6-liter experts on the show. So Nick, you had actually referred me when I said, well, who's the 6-liter expert in the country? You said, talk to Eric at Innovative. So that's what we did.
Yeah, I had a lot of time, talking with those guys over there, working through one of our sales guys, Jim. We went through some tune iterations. As most listeners know, we don't tune 6-liter Ford Power Strokes on the truck that we tested the turbo on. I did I did tune that truck, and I did work with Eric on that, and it was a fun process. It's always neat to work on a new platform and see how the controls work, and get to drive a new platform and get to see one of your products show. And it was a cool thing, and that's why I thought Eric would be a really good guest for you.
Yeah, man. And yeah, without any further ado, let's kick it over to my favorite part of the show, and that's Calibrated Power presents our special guest. I got Eric and AJ from Innovative Diesel. We got Eric Eldrith, founder of Innovative Diesel, along with AJ Jennings, his 6-liter expert on staff. Eric, AJ, how the hell are you?
Doing great.
Doing good over here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Please, hey, glad to have you guys on, because we're going to talk about something today that I've maybe made a few jokes about. And I think everybody knows that I'm also wildly uneducated on this topic. We're talking about the 6-liter Power Stroke.
Yay.
I'm so excited.
We love our 6-liters.
Now, before we dive too far in, AJ, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about how you got your start in diesel performance?
So I got my start in diesel performance basically just by actually buying a 2004 Excursion. Just started messing with tuning when I actually worked at a Mustang shop. And then lo and behold, Innovative Diesel was about an hour and a half from my house. So I drove down one day, met Eric, and then a couple months later, I was working for him instead of the Mustang place. So, and I've been here, 6 years. So.
That's awesome. So we have this common thread on our show whenever we talk to guys who work in diesel performance, and it so often starts with, well, I was a customer and then I started hanging out at the shop and then they finally started paying me to be there. Pretty close?
Yeah. Pretty close. I mean, I came down one time, and then it was just more conversation after that. It really didn't come down too much. And then basically it was like, hey, are you looking for any help down there? And the answer was yes. So 6 years later, here we are.
Eric, now you're the founder of Innovative Diesel. This is a huge name in the 6-liter world. Even somebody as dumb about Power Strokes as me has heard of you guys and has heard your name. I know Jim Rendon over at our shop has had a chance to work with you and has had great things to say about his experience with your team. But just for anybody who's maybe been more of the Duramax and Cummins world, tell us a little bit about your background in diesel performance.
Well, it started probably in the late 90s, early 2000 with the 7.3s. We got into those a little bit, and at that point, I didn't know much about a diesel other than back then, they sounded different than a gas vehicle and used different fuel. But we were kind of touching into the diesels with tuning. I was doing more gas calibrations back then, doing a lot of like Lightnings when they had come out fresh in the 99 and the 2003 Cobra. Yeah, so I was tuning with SET software, and they decided to get into diesels. Well, the first application they offered, of course, was the 7.3, but it was already a tuned, somewhat out of the box tuned vehicle. There wasn't any real custom tuning for it, so that changed a little bit, changed the industry a little bit. But the 6-liters, they were actually a new control system. They had CAN bus, which was new for Ford. No one knew it. It was kind of mysterious and kind of black magic how this all worked. So, I started digging into it. The owner at the time of SET said, Eric, diesels are the thing. Here's the software. Have fun. So I went and bought a 2003 6-liter, started playing with the software, and I hit the drag strip. So I'll keep this short because I could talk about it forever. But I went through the drag strip and I was racing against the 4 guys, and they had 7.3s. A buddy of mine, Greg DePron, Doc Boy, he was real popular on the forums. He's pretty semi-retired from the industry now, but he had a 7.3 down there running, full bigger turbo injectors, nitrous, and here comes Eric up to the line with the 6-liter that nobody really knows about, and Greg bust out like a 1280, and I ran through it like 1350 and a quarter mile. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, what do you have done to this truck?" So I popped the hood, and it was just a tune. We didn't have intakes, exhaust, or anything back then. It was just a tune. So Greg posted it online, and everybody called us a liar. They swore I sprayed nitrous. So that's after that, I was hooked.
I love that. That's just.
Oh yeah,
it's so true to being in diesel performance. Like, one, going out with that first time that you're in a tune only truck and you're like, oh shit, this is cool. Like, this is nothing like anything else. And then that first time that you get to post like really awesome numbers, and of course it's the diesel industry, so of course somebody's got to poke at you and troll you and call you a liar. That sounds like it hits the nail on the head. Now, guys, I don't know a lot about the 6-liter. I know some really vague stuff, and I figured I'd have you guys on the show so we could dive into it a little bit better. There's been some revisions throughout the years. There's some different types of 6-liters. I kind of get that. I know about this clearly from other trucks. But walk me through it. These things came out in 2003. Who wants to just kind of give me a rundown of what was different in the 6-liter compared to the 7.3 before it?
I can start off, and if you want, and AJ can fill in. When the 6-liter came out, it was different. It was a smaller displacement, which scared people. It had much more available from the factory, more available fuel. The HEUI system, was regarded, especially in the industrial side, as being a good engine, a good base. It had good characteristics, low maintenance. Of course, moving that into the trucks and some of the abuse that a truck takes, RPM, towing, things like that, versus low RPM, lower load type work. It had its work cut out for it, which is why it got better through the years. I mean, those small changes that were made. But when it hit the lots, people didn't like it. I mean, and 03 was a cross year. You could buy a 7.3, you could buy a 6-liter, and everybody was trying to, scarf up all the 7.3s because they pretty much were scared because they didn't know of the 6-liter. And it proved to be difficult at first because, no one, like I said, it had this CAN system that passed messages around, much different than simply using voltages and resistance and stuff like that. So it was complicated. So everybody was, putting their strap-on boxes. We always called them strap-on basically plug and pray modules, and they were tearing the trucks up, and I think that's what gave it the bad name. If it wasn't for that, it probably would have been a little better off. Wouldn't you agree, AJ? We take those plug and pray boxes off and put tunes on them, and it seems like it fixes a lot of those quirky issues.
Yeah, you got to keep them plug and play or praise back on the 7.3 guys. So they worked okay back then, but nothing on the 6-liter.
Come on, I still know to this day guys who just traded in their 7.3 on a brand new 6.7, and they want to know if they can chip it.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, I guess we could chip it, I guess, if that's what we're going to call it.
Yeah, I would say half of our phone calls are still asking for a chip.
All right. So they come out in 03. I've heard this phrase before, as though what Ford tried to do was basically take the 7.3 displacement, shrink it down, add emissions to it, and increase horsepower output. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I would say so. That's pretty much what the idea with International was. I mean, they had International do the project. They'd had the Power Stroke, of course, was 7.3 was International. They made the 6-liter, and it's kind of like what they're doing now. I mean, you're big cubic engines are pretty much gone. They're getting
Yeah.
smaller and smaller and smaller, tighter packages, turbos, more boost, that type of thing. And that's what was happening in that industry also in the diesels.
Now, AJ, walk me through on that first generation, those 03s. What are some of the common failure points that guys deal with?
So, I mean, some of the common failure points, would be a high pressure oil pump. They were a different style. They were a cast style, or I'm sorry, they were like an aluminum round style that went into the valley. They typically, had a less of advantage of mate or reliability. So the high pressure oil system, really takes its toll, especially on a Huey, system. That all it does is require oil pressure all the time, basically. And then they also had some minor changes, from '03 to '04 with, moving some sensors around. They moved the ICP sensor from underneath the turbo to the valve cover. I don't know if they did that for heat or, just to get a better pressure reading. And they also got rid of there was a crossover tube on the back of the intake manifold, which made it, pretty difficult to work on a lot of things. Because of that tube being there, you always have to, pull the turbo off just to, get the intake manifold off. So from going from '03 to '04 was kind of a split year. They also had a lot of changes on the oil rail side, where the '03 was like a log style that went on top of the injectors, and then the '04 was a wavy rail. And then they replaced the high pressure oil pump as well with a much better reliability cast pump. So over the years, obviously, just like on any application, they'll upgrade and change parts, for better reliability and from what they thought that was at least going to be reliability for a 6-liter. So, but the one thing they couldn't fix is head gasket failures. So.
Yeah, and I want to dive into the head gaskets real quick there. I want to dive into the head gaskets at some point, but I want to circle back here to the 03, 04 changes. So, and we see this a lot. We see this pretty much with all manufacturers. You come out in 03 with something that's brand new, and then in 04 you have a mild amount of revision. So it sounds like all pretty similar architecture, maybe just some specific part upgrades that are like pretty minor changes from 03 to 04. Is that right? Are they rated at the same horsepower at least?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep, they're the same power and minor differences.
I think they were all.
Okay. And then Eric, I'm sorry, you were jumping in there to say something.
I was going to speak about the head gasket issue. Of course, that wasn't going to be forgotten, I'm sure. I think our most popular for that issue. But yeah, I was just going to speak about that, which is a pretty simple explanation, much more difficult mechanically fix for it. But the simple explanation is the first version of that engine was used in things like construction equipment, box trucks, things like that, which were lower power. School buses, they were much lower power than the trucks. They actually ran off the same type of computer, the fuel injection control module, actually on a school bus and some of the standalone systems, generators that FICM controlled the whole engine, everything. There was no PCM. That was basically the PCM. So what they did is they modified, the engine slightly and put it in a truck, which, like I said before, takes a lot more abuse. So, it needed either more bolts in the head, like other diesel engines have much more bolts in the head, or it needed stronger bolts and studs. In this case, it was what we use. But I think if that would have happened from the beginning, that the 6-liter probably would have been one of the most successful engines, kind of like we consider the 6.7 for the Fords now. If they would have done that with a 6-liter, it would have been a very, very successful engine.
I hear you.
Yep.
I hear you. What about Huey injection compared to common rail? Can we just, is this a good time to address that? As long as we're talking head gaskets,
yeah.
Let's jump over. Yeah. Let's talk fuel system. I don't know a lot about Huey injection. It's oil pressure driven fuel system, but there's a clear reason everybody else had gone to common rail at this point, right? Why do you think Ford held back? Why do you think they stuck with Huey?
I think a lot of it was like, with International, of course, they worked with Caterpillar on the the Huey system, and it's what they used. It was a licensed thing through them. Bosch, of course, licensed the high pressure that is the most popular that you see
Sure.
now, which is one of the reasons they went to Siemens on the 6.4. That was a Siemens high pressure system, but it's a very reliable system. I mean, like the Huey system, basically the way it works is it uses, like you said, high pressure oil to fire the injectors, and the actual fuel pressure ends up being, somewhere between 18 and 20,000 psi, which is the max, which is why you had to go to a high pressure system later, is because that you need those higher 25, 30,000, 35,000 psi of pressure to atomize the fuel for emissions. So, if you're not really considering that, which wasn't a requirement back then, it was probably comparable in efficiency to the other, diesel trucks at its time, and it also was it was really reliable. I mean, the oil system in them, you don't hear many issues other than the stiction issues in the injectors, and that's a lot related to the oil that we use. I mean, there was changes in the oils through for also emissions reasons. Some vehicles burn oil, and some of the additives, were harmful. So, if you take some of those things, out of the equation back in the early 2000s, it was considered a really reliable system.
Okay, fair enough. Good point. AJ, if we're looking at upgrading that fuel system, again, I know the common rail world. I throw a set of injectors, I throw a high pressure pump in there, I'm pretty much done. That is upgrading my fuel system. Maybe I need a low pressure pump depending on the truck I'm working with. What does it look like to upgrade a 6-liter set of injectors or pump, or how do I get more fuel out of my 6-liter if I'm in like that 03 to 04 range? What are some good options?
Yeah, so essentially, I mean, it's all really going to be relatively the same. You're adding a lift pump. On the 6 liters, you need to do a regulated return because the fuel pressure is regulated before it even gets to the engine. So you want to do the regulated return just to ensure that all the injectors have full fuel pressure to them. Obviously, without it, the back cylinders are going to starve the most. Just simple physics. And that's really it, as far as fuel system goes. With an upgraded lift pump, regulated return, you can run easily up to 205 cc injectors. If you wanted to do anything bigger than that, you'd have to then upgrade the high pressure oils pump just to be able to supply that additional oil pressure and hold that for the additional power there from the injector.
What does that stock high pressure oil pump hold up to for horsepower wise? Like if I did, you said 205 cc injectors and a stock high pressure pump, and I just had a balls out turbo system. What is a ballpark on a horsepower number?
Yeah, so with 205s and an upgraded turbo, typically you're going to be right around the 560 to 580 horsepower at the tire.
Okay.
So,
okay.
And that's that's a lot. That's pretty fair. Considering a lot of guys are still using these trucks for work or towing or whatever, so they want to keep it below that 600 horse mark for reliability. And that way they can still be able to do everything that they need to do with a truck, and then go on the weekend and have fun and play.
That makes sense. What kind of changes to the fuel system did we see from 03 to 07? What did they update or what did they change throughout the years with injectors or pumps?
And early 03, they had a manufacturer for the injectors, a different manufacturer for the injectors, and the injectors actually had a pilot injection mode, which is like a dual shot injector. During certain RPMs, it would fire the injector once for power and a small shot to quiet it down. Well, there was issues with that, and that was another reason that the 6 liters had a little bit of a bad name early on, or maybe a lot. But they would, they'd start smoking white, and vehicles start smoking white. You're unhappy when it's brand new, within a few thousand miles off the showroom floor. So it obviously wasn't tested very well, and the injectors and the oil system is just not designed to fire multiple shots. So when they mid '03 they switched over to a different injector, and they also changed the computer programming to fire just the one shot, and they got rid of the pilot injection mode. And that was really the only difference from '03 to '07. Fuel system and injectors, the whole system is pretty much the same.
Wow.
Yeah, the only thing else that
go ahead.
They did upgrade or change through the years was the fuel regulator spring. The regulator spring I don't know if they increased the pressure or if it's just a upgraded heavy better spring. But that's everyone calls it a blue spring, just because it's a spring that's painted blue. But it just replaces the factory spring. If a truck is low on fuel pressure, that will bring it back up to where Ford requires the fuel pressure to be.
Gotcha. Okay, so really light modifications to the fuel system throughout the years. The turbo, I know that's something that there were a few revisions of, right?
Yes. You want to speak a little bit about that, AJ?
Yeah. So I think there's 3 different versions of the turbo: in '03, an '04, and then a '05 to '07. The main difference between the actual physical turbos themselves is just sizing, and blade count. The '03 turbos, obviously everyone loves that 6-liter whistle at idle, which the '03s had a 10-blade wheel. And then the later models went to, I believe, an 11 on the '04, and then a 13 blade on the '05 and newer. So they actually did get quieter over time, getting rid of that whistle that everyone now likes to go back to.
Is that compressor blade count or turbine blade count?
That's going to be on the turbine wheel.
Yep. Were there any changes to the compressor exhaust housing aspect ratio or anything like that, or was it all just mild turbine wheel adjustments there?
It was just the turbine wheel adjustments. I don't know. I mean, I think they all pretty much stayed the same. 58 millimeter, I believe, stock turbo. And they, the design, the Garrett design, pretty much stayed the same. They did some slight modifications for maintenance reasons. They had some vane sticking issues, so they adjusted some things inside on the vanes and used some ring and stuff like that. But in general, you could take an '03 turbo, bolt it to an '07 truck. The bolt pattern is slightly different. Instead of using 3 bolts, you'd have to use 2 in some cases. They changed the pedestal and stuff, but in general, it's pretty much the same turbo.
Okay, cool. Another strong performer for these trucks has been the transmission. I guess I've never really heard guys complaining about transmission, at least in stock form. Now, I always assume that's because the trucks just didn't run long enough for anybody to hurt the trans. But you guys are saying that might not be true. I've been waiting all episode to get one jab in there. Just the whole time I've been holding it.
Too. That was good. I think I know most of them, but actually was a pretty good one there. But the 5R is an excellent transmission. A lot of the newer transmissions from Ford and some other manufacturers work very similar to how the 5R operates. Electronic solenoids and things like that. The control system, how the transmission's controlled, how torque readings are read and shaft speeds and things like that. They were kind of ahead of their time. And in stock form, the transmission has no trouble folding up, 500-600 horsepower to the wheels. With constant abuse. I mean, of course, it does shorten the life of the transmission. But, in general, we've made 600 horsepower for years on stock transmissions. And the beauty of that transmission is when you upgrade them, there's not a lot to do to the transmission internally. I mean, some people go overboard. Of course, you can make heavy duty parts for, billet this, billet that, whatever you want. But if you, like my 6-liter race truck, which, it was a solid 10-second truck back in, 2005. And 2006 area or whatever, it had a billet, input shaft, a torque converter, and clutches, and that was it. And it was 1,300 horsepower truck, and it held it. I rebuilt the transmission one time, and just to upgrade.
That's impressive. That's impressive today.
They're very strong. It is. It is. It's very impressive. It's a good transmission, and yeah. And the biggest problem with the transmission is just like a lot of these new transmissions, and the newer high power cars is they're complicated. I mean, you have, if something does, if there is an issue and something does go wrong, I mean, you have a bunch of solenoids in the transmission. You have a bunch of wiring in there. You have, pressure is of course important with any transmission, but with specifically to these transmissions, if you lose pressure, it could apply clutches that shouldn't be timed at that time, and basically break the intermediate shaft right in the transmission and destroy it. So everything has to be right. So if you do have a problem and you're trying to fix the transmission yourself, or you're going to AMCO or something like that, they're probably going to struggle with it. It takes probably someone that has some experience with the transmissions and to understand what went wrong and be able to know what parts to replace, just to replace, because it could be an issue because it's hard to test.
Okay,
that
I
type
gotcha.
of thing.
Like I said, I've heard good things about the transmission. Some of the other stuff, I think we've all heard some of the horror stories. You got to bulletproof it. You got to do injectors too often. Whatever the other complaints are, turbos fail, things like that. But if I got guys, if we got listeners who are out there shopping for trucks and they're looking at, hey, I got to buy this truck, and then I know I got to have, I don't know, a budget to kind of get it up to a really nice, healthy, fun place. Would you recommend they shop around for the 03, 04 models? Is it worth it to spend the extra money on the 05 to 07? So what's your suggestion there?
AJ does a lot of deals with a lot of that, looking at trucks and helping customers out with that type of stuff. So he'd probably have a really good answer for that. What do you think, AJ?
Yeah, so I would say the better bet is always to find an 05 to 07 truck. Not just because of mechanically, 6-liter wise, but one, you get a better riding truck. Because they 03, 04, they were still spring, or leaf spring suspension on the front, and 05 they went to coilover. So you have a much better ride and turning radius and everything with the coil suspension. And the other difference is just what we touched about a little bit earlier is just the upgrades that they've done throughout the years. Everything's already done there to it. The difference in the high pressure oil pump and the SPC fitting there for it. They went from plastic to metal. Everything's kind of already done there for them. With the trucks having these 07 being 13 years ago. A lot of these trucks are already studded, so you can already find a 06, 07 that's already been bulletproof for a reasonable amount. That's not too much more than a 03, 04 truck.
Okay, good stuff. I think that's solid advice. Guys, Eric, let's start with you. Was there anything that I should have asked you that we haven't got to talk about yet?
The only thing I can think of that I'd bring up, especially with a used truck, is when someone looks for a truck and they buy something, of course they're going to have high miles, to budget for, replacing the parts with new parts, don't use rebuilt parts, things like that, especially like with injectors. There's a lot of companies that might take used cores and rebuild them and send them back to you. And that, if you work on your own truck, that's not so bad, because, 3 hours out of your day to replace an injector's probably not that big of a deal. But if you don't work on your own truck and you take it to a shop and, to pay 3 hours labor or sometimes more to replace an injector, and then the possibility of kind of playing whack-a-mole to figure out which injector is going next, you're probably just better off buying a set of nice 8 brand new injectors. If you're going to modify them, have them modified from new injectors. That's our biggest complaint from customers is injectors. And I think, you kind of mentioned that earlier with some of the problems that people complain about with the 6 liters. And I think that's the issue. I mean, they're a truck that's, it's kind of complicated, like most newer vehicles. It's complicated electronics. They're hard to diagnose for people from home, unless you have the right equipment. So if you're going to do the work yourself, or you're going to take it somewhere and you only want to pay the labor twice, you're probably better off just buying new parts.
That's good advice. That's good advice.
As a calibrators, it's nice because we end up spending a lot of time diagnosing problems, which we don't mind. Sometimes it takes a little time to help from data logs that we get, and asking customers questions and things like that. It can take a little while to help someone diagnose something. And of course, it's you would think a lot of times, you have a a stock truck, high miles. It runs decent when it's stock. You put a high power tune in it or whatever, and you start to see some issues you didn't have before. So that's always a recommendation from us to the customer. And if you don't have the money, to do that, or if you do the work yourself, we'll definitely help you diagnose it and go through the logs and talk it over with you. I mean, that's why we're here. But that's one piece of advice that we try to give to our customers.
I love that. I think that's really solid advice. I think everybody should be following that. AJ, if people want to follow along and learn more or contact and reach out and get a hold of Innovative Diesel, how can they do so?
You can always get a hold of us either Facebook, Instagram, or obviously always can call or email. Our phone or email, I would say, is probably always the easiest there to get a hold of us. Obviously phone, during the day is number one. So, if you call, you get, either me or Eric. So, we can go over, and if anyone's ever looking for, like put a package together, or like if they want, anything of that nature, we can always do that as well. But yeah, I would say.
Perfect. What's your guys' phone number?
Phone number is 410-620-3020. And then the email is going to be just sales@innovativediesel.com.
And if you go to our website, innovativediesel.com, we have links to our Facebook, Instagram. There's a contact us that will automatically email, so you don't have to remember the email. And of course, our phone number is on there, 410-620-3020.
Perfect. Eric, AJ, who do you guys want to give a shout out to?
Go ahead, AJ.
So I would just give a shout out to all our customers, really. Without them, we, couldn't be doing what we love here. Tuning trucks or, sitting on the dyno and doing things. So, without them, we want to be here. So thank you for everyone that's done something over the years for us.
Wonderful. Eric?
At this time, I just want to thank all our first responders, our doctors, nurses. We've got some issues going on with which we didn't talk about. I think we hear a lot about it already with the coronavirus. We're hoping everybody stays safe and healthy and praying our country gets back to normal and all that kind of fun stuff. So other than that, I just want to thank my wife and my kids. They put up with me working all the time. It used to be you'd go to work all the time, but these days, not only are you at work, but your smartphone or your tablet's in front of your face when during the evenings. And it needs to be. We need to take care of our customers. They definitely take care of us. So it keeps us living our life and doing our thing. So I appreciate all the customers too, and thanks for the opportunity.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. And certainly thank you from all of our listeners for sharing all of your great knowledge about the 6-liter. I'm not going to go buy one yet, but I do love hearing about them. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I think Jim's
I don't know. Jim's kind of stingy with letting you use cars. He never let me.
No.
Let me do burnouts in his cars before. I don't know. Maybe you can.
I like what you're saying, AJ. I agree. Jim is going to let me borrow his truck. Good call. I have your permission.
There you go.
Bye when you.
All right, guys. Have a great night. This is Paul Wilson, and I'm going to go buy a 6-liter Power Stroke. I do love hearing about them. So thank you guys so much.